I'm very excited to be here with Astrid and Bill from Animotion. Thank you both for being here. Very excited. And you guys just literally, not too many minutes ago, got off the stage at an 80s fest here in Huntington Beach.
That's right.
And how was that?
It was fun. It's wild. It's outdoor. The wind is blowing. There's, I don't know, thousands of people there, and we had to walk a long way to find the stage, and then we get there. You know, it's like Spinal Tap. Yeah. Most gigs are kind of like Spinal Tap.
Like in Spinal Tap, you guys cranked it up to 11 when you took the stage, correct?
We actually did, honestly. We pride ourselves on not just standing there playing the music, but actually giving a performance. And so at one point I noticed our bass player laying on the stage with his legs in the air, and I was like, that's all good. You know, I love that kind of thing. You know, we don't try to take ourselves too seriously. And as long as we're connecting to the crowd and they looked like they were all happy and they got up on their feet when we did an impromptu version of Tainted Love, and they were all like, oh, all right, because they gave us some extra time. We're like, well, let's do Tainted Love. That'll be great.
Perfect for an 80s fest, right?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Very cool. Well, in addition to the excitement of today, you guys have had a lot of exciting developments here in 2017 that fans of Animotion, I think, are similarly excited for. Excitement is, I think, the word of today. And your new album, Raise Your Expectations. Right. Definitely wanted to talk about that. And I actually have been listening to it for a couple days now, and to be honest, and this is all honesty, I'm not just blowing smoke, it's a really good album, and I'm very impressed by what I would consider the balance of it. I mean, there's always been, I think, in any Animotion album, especially with the vocals of Astrid and you, Bill, and the instrumentation of everybody in the band, a certain level of balance. And sometimes the balance, you know, is a little more here, a little more there. But this album, to me, felt like an absolute, finely tuned, yin-yang release, and I thought it was great. Is that, if you want to use that in any promotional materials, feel free.
It was an awesome yin-yang release for me.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, Astrid and I try to be sensitive to each other while we're singing and while we're working on an album, so there are times when something might be more of my vocal or her vocal, and there's a give and take, and we just sort of try to support each other in expressing ourselves, right?
Yes, it was a very enjoyable experience because it was very relaxed. It was in somebody's house that had a studio in the house, and they were very welcoming, and we you know, we played together with the lyrics, and when Bill would be in the vocal booth, I'd be out there, you know, kind of like making sure that he was having a good time in there, and then I got to do my vocals, and Bill was like, I'm gonna let you do that. See ya. Because, you know, that's how we work.
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
It's interesting, too, just sitting here with both of you. I mean, being familiar with you guys, seeing your videos, loving the band, but actually being here sandwiched between the two of you and just seeing the way that you look at each other fondly. I mean, your eye contact, when you're talking, you're kind of getting a vibe off Bill. Bill's looking over at you. I mean, there's a real, for lack of a better term, an intimacy, if I may say so. Just that connection that's been there for a long time musically with you guys.
We're musical partners and have been for a long time, and we've had our roller coaster ride, as all bands do. But now we're at this place where we are all about communication. Took us a while to get there, but in fact that was a song that didn't make it onto the new album, but did get recorded, a song called Communication. We were playing live for a while, but that's what we strive for, to connect. To connect with each other, to make sure that we're actually connected on stage and in our performances, and that we support each other's vocals, like you were saying.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
You know, we have never been a couple that lives together. Some people think we are, but we're not. But we are longtime partners in our creativity. And I think, for me, somewhere along the line, you know, we were so excited when Animotion burst onto the scene. And so Astrid and I are both kind of living our dream, and we would go out on stage and we're doing our thing and we're playing, and then at a certain point we both realized we need to like turn around and pay attention to each other, and that when we do that, whenever we do that, you know, and even today, I might be like, I'm thinking, guitar part, like, what's this going on? Is he doing, why is he on the floor? You know, things like that. And then I'll remember, oh yeah, I'm singing with Astrid, and I'll come around, and Astrid will be right there, and then we'll, you know, or I'll come up and I'll just give her a little nudge, and she'll go, okay, he's coming up behind me, and then we'll sing together, we'll play a few lines,
And
That's beautiful.
we've actually perfected the art of both singing into one mic, and that's really like worked well for us over the years. We can just tell almost psychically if we're both going to sing something together. We'll try to give each other room. I'll try not to squish his guitar hand, and there's been times, like there was a gig not too long ago at House of Blues where there was not a mic for him on the first song, one of those other crazy situations. So we did the first song sharing a mic, and we just made that work for ourselves because that's what we do.
That's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
like Paul McCartney, John Lennon. I mean,
Right.
Islands in the Stream with Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Whatever the duet or whatever, it's just a beautiful thing in music. And even going all the way back to Obsession, which I think when you think of 80s, basically in a way, like Human League and other great 80s songs, in essence a duet, a back and forth of perspectives, female, male, yin, yang. I mean, and I think when I think of Animotion, again, coming back to the new album, I always kind of think of that balance that exists. The instrumentation is tight. There's the synths, the production. It feels modern, but it also feels like something that your traditional fan would really find interest in. So.
Thank you. You know, we wanted to be sensitive to people that knew us from Obsession and other songs from back in the day. So we've definitely brought in the synths and the rock guitar and all that. Yeah. But then once we got those wheels turning, then we just wanted to be in the moment, in the present. And our producer for most of the album is a guy named Chuck Kentis, and Chuck is Rod Stewart's musical director, and he's been working with our guitarist Don, who plays with Rod, for the last 15 years or so. And Chuck is fabulous with everything, really. He did a lot of programming and played synths, along with our original keyboard player Greg Smith is also playing synths on the album. So yeah, it was really fun. And then, as Astrid said, his studio is in his home, and so his family was there, and he has one young son who was cutting videos, doing music videos for some other young band, and we tapped him to do our first video for the album last time, and the production value is really great.
That actually is on my list of questions that I had for you. Chuck's son, the videography that he did, and I had a question that I wanted to ask both of you guys about the legacy of the band as it relates to music videos, going all the way back. I Engineer, Obsession, just the stylistic approach to music videos, especially 80s MTV era. And the new music video, I wanted to ask you, or maybe this is a question for his son, but it's perhaps not so subtle. The tip of the hat, or the hearkening back to the idea of the pool as kind of a centerpiece of the song. Was that related to?
Didn't even think of that.
Because
That's cool.
okay, cool. Well, I'm glad. I didn't know if it was supposed to. It was like an obvious
No,
reference
we're
that I was
kidding.
like so dense.
That was all deliberate.
all-
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't. No.
But
no.
of
Spent
course.
hours thinking about that. Yeah, yeah.
No, so of course, in Obsession, I mean that just iconic video with that palatial pool, and then of course with the new video of some younger kids, kind of multicultural, diverse group of folks, and that pool reference. It just seemed like a nice kind of bookend and reference to me as a fan. But
Of course, yes. When we were first preparing to create the video, Astrid and I were not going to be in it. We were like, we thought we don't need to be in this video. We're not, because, and there's logistics, and it's like, how can we both get down there, and how can we really make this work out? So we were not going to be in it. And then, kind of as an afterthought, Astrid and I were in town to do a show, and the director of the video had us sing in front of that curtain or whatever, So there's just a little glimpse of the two of us singing there together, and they plugged that in. But then the actor that was going to do the part that I played, kind of coming down the hall, he got ill or something, so they were like, "Bill, can you do this?" So I came down and did it. Otherwise, I would have liked to have had more time to have Astrid in it with me and play through that. And we'll see going forward how that all works out. But it's really, a lot of it has to do with logistics,
Very cool, very cool. Well, Astrid, I wanted to ask you, the title of the new album is Raise Your Expectations.
Right.
And I wanted to ask about the meaning of that. And it may go without saying that, but whether that's an actual statement to fans or critics out there, the title of the album, as well as the song Bad Review, which is
Right.
more clearly, in essence, sort of like a middle finger to certain constituencies out there. But both the title of the album and that song title, pretty daring stuff. And I just wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, Bill actually said it well earlier today when he was talking about, how long it's taken us to get this new album done. And the idea that we didn't want to put something out that was going to be like halfway or not really representative. And it took us a few attempts to really get a full produced album done. It's not that we haven't done any recording over the years. We've done a lot. But we wanted it to be up to snuff, and we wanted it to be like really, really top notch, like what we ended up with. And so we raised our expectations, plus we didn't give up. There was a lot of times when we felt like we're never going to get this done, because we would almost get it done and then something would happen. And so, to just kind of keep that faith going and say, we are going to do this, and wow, we're actually doing this, and oh my God, now they want us to make another one. Wow. And we're already starting on that now.
So interesting. So it wasn't necessarily a message exclusively to people out there, but it was also a tome to the process that you all went through internally to keep the fire lit and keep going. And interesting.
Right. To, just not always settling for what is, but to just be at your full potential, Okay.
It's also it was the very first song that was going on the album. It was this Raise Your Expectation was the song that the label heard first and said, we want an album from you. It's also produced by a wonderful young man in Colorado who goes by the name Joe Man. And it's Joey Mancuso in Colorado. And he had done a remix of Obsession that I was impressed with. So I wrote him a note saying, hey, I really like that. And he said, hey, if you ever want to do anything new, let me know. So I had a version of Raise Your Expectations. I sent it to him. He put his stamp on it. I sent that to the record company, and they said, based on that song, we're signing you. And, I was a little reluctant to call it the title of the album, because it isn't really saying to fans, well, you might, we don't know what your expectations.
Implying that their expectations are low to begin with, or something, or critics.
Not meant to be. It was actually, the lyric is kind of, I'm talking to myself in the way, and we're speaking to ourselves about how we go through different changes in our life. The second verse is, how did I arrive out here so far from where I first began? And then Raise Your Expectations. It's like, you gotta find a way to pick yourself up and keep going. Like Astrid said, this is the way it was for our album. It's like, we had recorded, there were things we liked, and then we get to a point where something would stall it out for some reason. It might be that something's going on in our families, that we can't get together, we're in different cities. And so finally, when Invisible Hands Music said, we want an album from you, and we want it by this date, and
the fire was lit.
The fire was lit, and then we all sort of really put ourselves into it.
Another thing that fans might dig is the fact that there's sort of a new updated version, or a new version of Let 'Em Go on that album, which of course was a classic Animotion track from back in the day. And all these years, in hearing the original version of that, this is another fan question, and I may be totally wrong, I may be right. We'll find out here in about 5 seconds. But the Let 'Em Go always felt like, again, kind of the yang to the yin of Obsession, in the sense that Obsession's about control, and I'm going to capture you like a butterfly, and put you in a bottle or whatever. Whereas Let Him Go was about kind of, if you love somebody, let them go, and if it was meant to be, they'll come back. Was that?
You've done your homework.
Well, I'm just a fan. This is all just 30 years of sitting and being a bed sitter in my room, spinning Animotion records over and over and over.
Good.
So is there anything to that dichotomy of those two songs kind of being related, but of two polar opposites?
Well, we've all been in relationships, right? And we've all been in relationships where there's been some insecurity on one side or the other. And, exactly what Bill said, you can't keep somebody by clinging to them and being obsessive about it. Yes. Because if you do that, you turn into a weirdo stalker. So we try not to be weirdo stalkers. I do anyway. I try not to be. And so, I have to remember that, if somebody's meant to be in my life, I'm going to give them the freedom to be who they want to be. And if they want to be with me, great. And if they don't, that's okay, because I enjoyed being with you the time you were there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, was there a reason why that song, again, to sort of revisit that song and perhaps in some ways come full circle on this new album? I mean, was there something kind of symbolic of that message here in 2017 about letting certain things go, or?
There's two reasons. One is because it was a song that that I owned all the rights to, and we were like, well, are we going to remake anything?
Okay.
So, well, that one was clear. For instance, there doesn't have
No entanglements.
Yeah, there weren't entanglements, and also, you know, when we originally got together, Astrid and I, the record company executive, whose name is Russ Regan, wonderful guy who has had a lot to do with the careers of the. I think he gave the Beach Boys their name, honestly. He signed Elton John, he signed Kiss, a lot of people. He's been there a long time. He looked at the two of us and he said, guy, girl, this could be kind of an updated version of Fleetwood Mac, where he sings, she sings, they sing together, and it swings back and forth. And so Let Him Go was always meant to be that moment in the set where Astrid can really come out and just roar. And so it just felt good to swing it back and let her do this again on this album with a new beat that was put there by Joe Man. So.
Okay.
These days, what I do love so much is connecting with the females that are out there, and I love watching them dancing, and I really love to connect with the females out there, not in any weird way, but, you know, just to kind of share that understanding that, you know, we can't trap him like that. You know, you've got to just let him be who he's going to be, and you be who you're going to be, and don't be so insecure.
Well, and Astrid, I think too, I mean, not that I can speak on behalf of female fans out there, but, you know, as a male fan, I mean, you and your style and going all the way back, you know, to the 80s, you always really, to me, encapsulated a strong female presence that embodied strength, sensuality. I mean, I think Obsession was probably one of, along with maybe Prince, something on Purple Rain or something, that song always, as a 10-year-old kid, you know, it was deep, and there was sexuality, and there was stuff in there that my adolescent mind didn't quite get, but really edgy stuff. And so for you as a strong female to be out there and speak your mind and be representing, you know, like, you know, I think of folks like Cyndi Lauper and other people of that era. I'm sure that you've had female fans that just say, you've been an inspiration to me. And so your message to those female fans, I think, is particularly, has some weight, perhaps.
Thanks. Yeah, it's always just so heartwarming when you know, like just today, this woman came up to me and she said, Astrid, thank you for doing that. She was, I love that you still come out and do that for us, and you represent us. You represent us. You're still, you know, got a fabulous body, and your voice is better than it's ever been, and thank you. And that inspires me to keep going, because, you know, sometimes we all doubt ourselves. I'm like, should I really be doing this at my age? And then I brush that thought aside and just say, of course I should. If they want me to come, I'll be there. You know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you get inspiration from fans, and it's a symbiosis.
They feed me, for sure. Yeah.
Well, a question that I have for you guys that I like to ask all of the artists that we interview is going way, way back to your very first experience of with music, more specifically the very first album or record you recall ever purchasing. It sometimes is kind of a guilty pleasure type thing. It usually is. When I ask this question, people kind of cringe. But can you remember what that first album was? The first time that you went to a record store, bought a single, a 7-inch, or whatever it may have been back in the day.
I was always such a pop fan, you know, and growing up in England, music was all over the map as far as, you know, the Beatles and then Motown and all of that stuff. So my album was actually it was like pop hits or something, and it was a bunch of covers of all the current hits that I really, really liked. And that was the one I bought, because I didn't like one particular genre. I liked to kind of check everything out. So it would be Something in the Air by Thunderclap Newman, and then, you know, just, I don't know, Motown and just all that stuff, you know. And then the first album anybody gave me was Led Zeppelin, the first album. My cousin gave it to me. He goes, you need to listen to this. It's like, okay, now I'm a Led Zeppelin fan.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Bill, same question for you, man. Very first album that you can remember purchasing.
I think I want to say the first song I learned on guitar was Turn, 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 which was a done by the Byrds. I really loved the sound of the jangly guitars, and Chris Hillman, I think, playing that guitar. Mr. Tambourine Man, Dylan, again, was one of the first songs I learned, and so that's one of the first things that I remember. But I was a dyed-in-the-wool Beatles fan from the very beginning. I remember going to I had a buddy whose father was a minister, and they had a pancake dinner. And the Beatles had just broken out, I Want to Hold Your Hand had just come out, and somebody got a few Beatles wigs and had us at the age of I don't know, I think I might have been about 10 years old, and we put on Beatles wigs and lip synced to I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Did a performance, and
I was kind of in it right from that moment. It's like, there's something about this that just feels so right, and so I started dreaming about it. And I when you go to there's the Experience Music Project up in Seattle. Walk into the Beatles room, and you go from monitor to monitor, and it's everybody from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and so many bands are saying, "I saw A Hard Day's Night," and I was like, "That's what I want to do," And so for me, that was also, I saw that movie, and I was like, run around with your bandmates, playing rock and roll while.
I think every era has that. A lot of the punk bands that we've interviewed from the 70s talk about going to see the Sex Pistols at one or two shows. And from those one or two shows, 50 groups sprung. And again, the Beatles influence, I think similarly, just that tinder that was there to just explode and influence a generation. It's that doesn't happen every year. It's a pretty precious thing.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, in terms of as you progressed in the LA music scene, and you guys were in a band called Red Zone, I guess, for a while, a sci-fi kind of theme.
I was in a band called Red Zone, and that was pre-Animotion. It was two girls and two guys, and a girl bass player and a guy guitar player who was an insane nutter, who actually was so creative. He was like a mad professor. And he designed all this jewelry and LED light stuff that would light up, and we would have flash pots on stage and strobe lights and everything. We were kind of like a precursor to the B-52s. Because
a little campy, obviously.
Very campy, crazy makeup, crazy costumes. And so that's what I sprang from when I sprung upon Bill. And he was like, "What the heck is this weird British woman?" Right? That was your impression of me, right?
And you had just arrived in the States a few years prior, and you were already just,
Well, I saw Red Zone play. I saw them play. A matter of fact, we played at the Madame Wong's West. I think it was on the same night. Red Zone was in one room, we were in another room, and I had the Billy Bond band. So I had seen them, and then a mutual friend called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in meeting with Astrid about Animotion, about this band, because that crazy creative guitarist had left. It kind of fell apart. I mean, Astrid could tell you about that.
I was actually going to ask you guys about the LA scene and Madame Wong. So many artists that we've interviewed talk about just the amazing sort of nexus of talent and people that played, there, and even other phenomenons. Like there was a show called New Wave Theater that was very influential. A lot of bands went on that, and it was just a relatively small thing that had a huge influence. But Madame Wong's, I mean, what a magical sort of. It wasn't as glamorous as it's sometimes portrayed, but in terms of its influence, that was quite the club, the scene here.
It really was, and Esther Wong, who owned the clubs, I mean, she did a service to the music scene, even though she was there trying to make her money, but she was very supportive of all the bands. And I saw so many great bands come and go, and I was a fan. I would go and see. I used
who
to.
did you see there? Like what other band?
Well, okay, you'll never have heard of this band, but I was a big fan of a band called the Cripples. Okay. Because this guy literally was a cripple, and he would get up there with his crutches and rock out like some of those early punk bands. And I was just so impressed with him being willing to just do that in spite of his,
it's empowerment. It's punk rock empowerment.
Right. Right, and it was great. And I saw the Go-Go's, when they were just starting out and they didn't really have a record deal going on. But
bands like Suburban Lawns, one of my favorite bands, I guess, played there, and a lot of punk bands, a lot of different people.
Yeah, it was a fun scene in those days. I saw Tori Amos there. Before she was Tori Amos, she was Tori Reed. And she stole one of my little stage tricks, and I noticed her doing that.
Congrats, Tori. If you're out there watching this, you're going to hear from Astrid's lawyers eventually. It's been a few years, but she's planning a legal case, so better go and hide. But
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're getting close here to being done. You guys, busy schedule here, but one last question for you. Through the years, you guys have, just like today, had the pleasure of taking the stage with just amazing musicians that you've either played with during your sets or or you've toured or played alongside. And as you think back through the 3+ decades of your career, are there any sort of collaborations, especially tours and memories that really stand out when you think about the history of Animotion?
Some of the most magnificent shows were Depeche Mode shows. Those were early on, big ones. And as a matter of fact, Depeche Mode invited us to tour with them in 1986 and to do the entire North America tour, and we turned it down. That's my biggest regret. We turned it down for financial reasons because it's so expensive to tour. And then our first year, a lot of our money had gone to pay for all the things that we did. And so we were kind of gun shy. We were sort of like, well, we want to go out, but then it costs so much, and so at any rate. But so Depeche Mode was fantastic. Our tour with Howard Jones was unforgettable. We loved that. But I have to say, Tom Bailey of the Thompson Twins blew me away last year. In recent memory, my favorite act, the sound, even the composition of the songs and the way they were played and the way that it held up and the way that the audience started singing, "Hold Me Now," and all of that, I was smitten.
And I always think of Animotion as having a lot of musical similarities to the Thompson Twins, both bands that I both liked a lot. Yeah. And about 2 years ago, we had the pleasure of going and seeing both Howard Jones and Tom Bailey. That was, of course, for folks that don't know the full story, how, in essence, Howard, kind of supported Tom in coming out of some musical retirement. He hadn't played Thompson Twins stuff for a long time. Right. And Howard, as his friend, had been there to support him and encourage him to get out there and do some performances. Yeah. And we saw both of them perform in a small little club. It was a secret show announced 24 hours before up in San Francisco and 5 feet away from Howard Jones. It was beautiful, and Tom was amazing, man. Hearing those hits and the fans and the energy. So I'm so excited to hear a musician talk about how inspiring Tom coming out of retirement, so to speak, was.
And you probably felt the same way. It was like, I didn't realize he was such a fabulous guitarist. I mean, I knew he was a good songwriter, a good singer, but he was playing everything from the big jangly police type chords to the kind of rocking things. It was quite impressive.
Yeah. I hope we see more from Tom. I hope him and Howard get back on the road and do some more shows. Well, Astrid, that question for you, when you think back about collaborations through the years or playing alongside folks or touring with people, any memories come to mind?
Well, honestly, like Bill said, Howard Jones and Depeche Mode stick out in my mind. But, when we got to go to Switzerland and we did shows with all those fabulous people like Simply Red and Phil Collins and the Eurythmics, I was a big fan of all those bands. But recently, we've been able to tour with people like Wang and last year ABC, and that was my jam. ABC,
Martin Fry.
Yes, yes. He's got it going on still.
He's looking good. Yeah, we've seen
He's sounding good. And honestly, when we do shows with him, I'm the one, after we get done, I'm running down to the front of the stage and I'm dancing and all the fans are going, and I'm like, shh, I'm watching them because that band rocks. Awesome. Yeah.
Well, it's so inspiring to see bands that we've loved through the years and that meant something to us who still are able to, and it's not easy, costs, the logistics of touring and the return on investment, but there's just nothing as magical as being in the front row and seeing a band that you love and performing and vibing. And I've been lucky to have that experience seeing you guys. I think a couple years ago at New Wave Bar, I was there just feeling that energy, and that's an energy you don't always get with bands, and definitely you get it from Animotion. So I want to thank both of you for everything that you've done through the years, and also again encourage fans out there to raise your expectations.
It's available on Amazon for sure, and iTunes, the usual outlets.
All right.
And please like us on Facebook and Instagram. It'll help us keep you informed about what we're doing.
Definitely. A lot of exciting things to come, no doubt, from the folks in Animotion. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.